Yeah, to be fair, though, we've not got long to do now. We've got like 5 minutes of in and out, if that, and we're done.
It's a fucking new record.
Which is longer than I've ever lasted.
Click that.
Hello and welcome to the Idle Chat podcast. We are your hosts. I am Callum. This is Adam.
Hello.
And this is going to be a fun little project that takes us into all things drifting. From street cars to competition cars, from the most entry level of vehicle to the most professional level of vehicle. We're going to talk about styling, setups, lash ups, everything around the world of drifting, yeah. This episode is going to be a little bit different to how we're going to go moving forward. This is going to be an introduction into us, who we are, a little backstory into our cars and how we got into the sport. So it's going to be a little bit different to the norm. Moving forward, we're going to be a little bit more structured. It's going to be more topic-based. We're going to have a kind of a focus for the episode, if you will, other than ourselves. We don't want to make it all about us.
No.
We will probably interject with little stories and snippets and things that we have to add. But the idea is going to be talking about current affairs, the latest trends amongst drifting, and then probably each episode will have a main focus topic.
Yeah, he's right. Those topics will include things such as tyres and the changes in tyres over when we started, which was whatever you found in the back of a skip, to these days where you've got a million different compounds from all different tyre manufacturers. And just for an example, of course. But there'll be various topics from tyres, like I say, to engines, chassis, do's, don'ts. And also we're hoping to get potentially some guests on later in some episodes as well. So hopefully you enjoy it. So on to a bit about us. I'm Adam, as previously stated. This is my sports vehicle. It is a 2001, I think, I'm not sure, Nissan Silvia S15 Spec R with the sunroof. It's got a 700 horsepower RB25 Neo engine, set up in a Japanese style, so it's got the rear bias, really snappy, really grippy. And it's pretty much bankrupted me. So
That is my fault, to be fair.
That is his fault.
I did start this train.
He did. Was it sixth form?
Yeah, sixth form, so what are we, 31 now? So
about 12, 13 years ago, Callum invited me he invited a few of us to go to an event at North Arena. I think it was
BDC. I think everyone came up to watch BDC when that was a thing.
Yeah. And I liked it. And then he said, come back in a few weeks and I'm drifting around the track and you can jump in.
I think it was actually the week after. I think it was the weekend after.
Was it?
We had a track day the weekend after. And me and Dad had RE34 there for...
Ripper.
I don't know, about a year at that point.
Yeah.
So, so you were a few people went up. Because it was far more interesting to watch BDC than it was. I
think we went up on a free period.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we had like 2 hours free.
Them bits where you meant to like do education and homework between lessons, we were like, let's go drifting.
A-levels, drifting.
Yeah.
Drifting.
And here we are.
Yeah. Should have done A-levels.
Yeah, it would be cheaper.
But and then I went up, watched, thought this is sick. And then you invited me to come out in your 34.
Yeah.
Not to the same calibre as...
Far from the same calibre. Although, to be fair, a BDC car back then wasn't that spectacular.
We'll get onto that in a future episode.
Yeah.
So Callum invited me to go out in the E34, and about half a lap in, I knew that I was screwed.
Yeah, we were hooked.
Yeah, I was screwed. And then about a year later, I bought an S14, which was hanging and was low on fuel. But what that meant was low on compression.
And steel.
It
was very low on steel, but it did polish up well.
Polished up well, looked really good, and then found out that was rotten. My dad, bless his heart, spent weeks and weeks welding it up.
But luckily, Adam took me down as his resident expert to check the car over. So we highlighted all issues when viewing.
Yeah, we had a good look underneath it, and we saw the silicon plates and thought, they look mint. Turns out they were just siliconed in. Yeah. And then Dad welded them in a bit more permanently and then found out that the engine didn't have a misfire because it was low on fuel. It had a misfire because it had no compression. So then ended up rebuilding the engine. So far the drift life has Not served me well.
Yeah, at this point, how many drift days had you done?
Like none.
Yeah.
I think I've done a few road miles on my HDev stage 3.
Fuck, she popped some flames.
She was rich.
And boost pipes. That car used to pop boost pipes constantly.
Did like a boost pipe. And then you get like a 7-meter flame out the back. And
Yeah, it was good flames. It was fucking horrible putting the turbo back, putting the intercooler pipes back on, because it was always at the one at the turbo.
Yeah, it's that. If you've got an SR, you'll know. It's that one that comes off the turbo underneath the manifold with a little elbow 90 on it.
Yeah, that's like a 1-inch to 3-inch reducer that pops off.
That's it, that one, the really hot one. So, yeah, anyway, we digress. Had that for a while, realised that was going to get no less rotten, so sold that whilst it still had some metal left in it. And then at the time, this car, cool story, well, I think it is, but you might disagree. Jack Tonkin from Jay's Garage, who's actually, funnily enough, mapped this car recently.
And actually not on the bonnet anyway, as I was about to point it out.
Yeah, there's no sticker, sorry Jack, but there was one on the other side. On the side. Good dude. So this car, Jack, back in the day, had a habit of going to Japan, going to Ibisu, buying an R32 with JZX and S15 or whatever, thrashing it for a week for Matsuri, G1 GP, whatever, and then importing it back into the UK, selling it, and then the profit from which he then used to
it paid for the trip.
Pay for the trip, yeah.
He got to a point where he was able to do Matsuri for free.
Yeah. I mean, these days, that ain't happening.
No.
So Jack actually had this S15 in Japan, so it's done Minami, it's done all the cool tracks. He got it back, it had a bit of a few dings in it, he sorted it out. He sold it to a friend of his, and then that friend, the turbo went, sent it back to Jack, and then the friend decided he didn't want it anymore, to which Jack offered me it for, I think it was £5,500, including a brand new set of rotor.
Yeah, it was the extra 500 quid was for the brand new rotors.
Rotor GTRDs. So they went.
They were not cracked yet either, because they were out the box.
Yeah, they were brand new. So we sold them for $750. So I had admittedly the turbo was shot, but I had a completely mint underneath S15 spec car with Carver cage, a few modifications, lock mods and that sort of stuff, for basically $4,750. We put a turbo on it. We took it to North Korea a few times.
Yeah.
And then
you put a Kinagawa on it.
TDO5,
yeah. Kinagawa TDO5, China's finest.
And then sent it to Jack for a Niztune.
Well, we sent it somewhere else first.
Did we?
Yeah, Hudson mapped it first.
No, did he?
Or did Hudson map it afterwards? Hudson mapped it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, so it went to Tom Hudson, who then went to work for Fensport, and now all he does, I think, is gym.
Yeah, he's at the end of his weight loss journey. I'm very much the beginning of that process.
He has offered though. He has offered to help you. Yeah, a few times.
Yeah,
I mean, you get the hint.
Yeah. I mean, the camera adds a few pounds, but not that many.
but yeah, and then they tricked me into thinking the engine was knocking. Callum, this is, and Tom, and
terrible. That backfired.
Jack, honestly. Which maybe in a future episode we'll let you know what happened. But I got them back. It took literally years.
But it did take years. But I have the clips on my phone of both getting Adam and Adam getting me. And I'll at some point we'll speak about that, and we'll put them in a clip. But yeah, the revenge was not pleasant for me.
No, you play with fire and got burnt real bad.
Yeah,
real bad.
Yeah. It wasn't a nice place to be, that end of the deal.
No.
Much funnier the other way around.
Yeah. Funny when it isn't you.
Real funny.
Always the way, isn't it?
Mine nearly ended in a divorce because Jack sent me the clip and I immediately mouthed my missus off. So
yeah, which given the clip I'd sent you or Jack sent you was fair enough. It was it was pretty devastating to be fair.
You got me good.
But we'll get into it. There's a bit of clickbait for you for a future episode. But yeah, Tom Hudson mapped it, you're right, on a Niztune on a TDO5, and it made like 300 horsepower, something like that. Used it for a while, did a few North Koreans. We did a Snetterton event and a few Rockinghams back with Monkey London and a few other people back in the day at Rockingham. Rest in peace.
Charvel.
Adam Charvel, Martin Batty when you stripped. And then it got a bit boring being SR. So back in the time, you could buy an RB25 Neo from JDM Distro for about 1,200 quid.
I think you paid 1,200 quid,
Yeah, and then I took the turbo off it, because it had a stock turbo manifold on it. And I sold that for about 200 quid. We put a head gasket and studs in it. 6-boost manifold, which I bought second-hand off eBay, and a few other bits and bobs, and a link. Sent it to Jack. Jack wired it up, and it made like 510 horsepower or something for 6 years.
I believe yours made 504.
504.
And mine made 430 at the time. But that's a different story.
We'll go into Callum's in a sec.
504, I think it made.
Yeah.
Forever.
Eventually, she got a bit tired. Cylinder 6 said bye-bye. Well, no, I didn't say bye-bye.
Say goodbye. It was
It said help.
Yeah, it needed a cuddle. It had lost a little bit of its compression.
She was sad.
Which is the traditional RB thing to do as well. Cylinder 6.
Yeah.
If you're going to lose compression, it's going to be on cylinder 6.
Yeah, you've got to expect it. But it done really well at this point. So I thought, that's okay. I'll buy another 25 Neo. They'll be, 1,500 quid? No.
Yeah, bear in mind this is 4 years over this period?
No,
5 years?
5 years.
5 years that RB was in it.
Yeah.
So, and this was 5 years coming up towards the COVID era as well.
Yeah. So
or was it just past the COVID era?
No, it was when I started this company. So it was about 2021. So just after COVID.
Yeah.
And I found out that Neos were now 4.5 grand.
Unknown.
Yeah, unknown, which made me really sad.
Used.
Used. I cried a bit. I rang Callum, who I'd mouthed off for spending a lot of money on an engine, and then had to eat humble pie and spend a lot of money on an engine. So I went to D-Way Engines. He said, it's all right. There's a bit of dent mark on the head and stuff, but nothing major. He built it. So it's now Tomei rods, CP pistons, Tomei top ends, so Tomei cams and stuff like that. I think it's got a 1.5mm head gasket, so it's a little bit lower on compression. Used that for a while as it was, but the turbo was a Kinagawa.
Well, you put basically the same turbo setup back on it, didn't you? So it was a 3076 Gen 2.
That's right. Yeah, and it was all right, but it was a bit...
You'd spent a lot of money on a built engine, and then we were already tapped on turbo systems.
Yeah,
so
we'd strapped a 300 quid turbo to a...
It was a bit disappointing.
Fancy engine.
That you took it for mapping. I think it made, 524 this time around?
Yeah, I think it made like 20 horsepower more than it did before, which was a bit sad.
Which at the time was a house deposit we'd spent on an engine build. And
it wasn't a house
well,
deposit.
not quite.
My girlfriend might watch this. So.
Yeah.
It was not cheap.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'd had a company at that point, so I decided that everything was free because you could get 20% off, even though that was definitely not the case. But I got a bit carried away. Anyway,
but you were happy with the engine setup, but disappointed that it didn't make much more power. I think was the heart of the matter from that, wasn't it?
Yeah, which is fair. But then,
and at this point, you'd also changed the car setup completely.
Yeah, we'll get into the setup a little bit before, but we're going through engine.
Oh, okay, we'll go through.
So went to DY, new engine, whatever. Went to Jack, made pretty much the same numbers, and then Jack was like, turbo's naff. But at the time, I'd spent a lot of money, and I felt really bad. Also, what had happened in this interim, which is a whole saga on its own, is we'd decided to change the gearbox for reliability.
Yes. Yeah, the gearbox that had never given us an issue.
Never given us an issue. I thought, look, I'm going to put more power into it. It's going to want a better gearbox. RB25 boxes, I paid 500 quid, 600 quid for mine.
600. We both paid 600 quid for our 25 boxes.
And now they're worth 1,600 quid. So that's got a bit leery. Yeah. So before I obliterate third on my RB box, I'll put an OS Geiken box on it. So that's what we did. Now that's a whole other story. We won't go into that right now. But it has now got an OS Geiken box after a year of messing about and
challenges, shall we say?
Yeah, and it's touch wood. Well, nothing's wood.
No wood.
Nothing's wood. So we'll park that one. But yeah, OS Geiken box, and then this year over winter. Last year I had a chat with Mark from Pulsar UK Turbos at I think it was Japfest.
It was following your victory.
Yeah, so I didn't know Mark, but through Jake Crouch. Big internet influencer. He put me in contact with Mark. It was on the night where we was doing some filming for Jake's YouTube, and met Mark from Pulsar and was chatting to him and showed him my Kinagawa, and he was not impressed. And then had a little joke and a laugh and said, "Well, if I win Japfest, you got to give me a turbo." Laugh, 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 ha, ha, ha. I have no chance of me winning Japfest. However, I had changed the car significantly. It was on B knuckle now rather than another cut knuckle. I changed the suspension settings and a few other bits and bobs thanks to help from Tom Hutchinson.
Dialed a lot of grip into the car as well. Started running semi-slicks.
Yeah, dialed load more grip into it. Made the front react a bit different. Made the rear react a lot different.
Two-way diff.
I think it had a two-way.
Did it?
Yeah, it had a two-way. But yeah, we changed a lot of things. So I wasn't sure how the car was going to perform. I thought, well, there's no chance of me winning, especially on a car I don't really know.
And you hadn't done Silverstone many times at this point, had you?
I'd done Japfest once.
Yeah, so
I'd done Japfest, track. Japfest the year before.
Yeah.
Ford Fair and track. So this is my
so you had a few
fourth
goes.
time at Silverstone. So I've done it a few times, but not many. But a new car to me, like I drove totally different.
Yeah.
And anyway, I said to Mark, well, if I win, give me a turbo. Not expecting to win, and I won. So I messaged Mark and said, what are the chances? He laughed, and to be fair to him, true to his word, he said, what do you want? I messaged Jack and said, Jack, what do I want? Jack said, you want this? I said to Mark, I want this. And a few weeks later, a turbo turned up. So fair play to Mark. We put that on this year, or ended last year.
Over winter, didn't we?
Yeah, and you did a load of fabrication.
Yeah, we swapped it. So you went to a G30 900.
Yeah.
We swapped it to a 4-inch downpipe.
Yeah.
And a big change to fueling system.
Yeah, so Jack had been talking to me about methanol. I heard a few people using it and saying like it makes a huge difference, but I hadn't driven a car with methanol mix or anything like that. Spoke to Jack, and Jack was like, well, I need a guinea pig, so I'll use you, because he wanted to work out a new flex fuel system that he'd been thinking about. And yeah, and then he did that, and it sort of made, I think it made 680 on the dyno, but it was spinning.
Yeah, it made
So
687 was the highest dynograph I saw, but
Yeah.
the dynograph had a lot of wheel spin in it.
Yeah, so it's we don't know. It's somewhere around 720.
In and around 700, yeah. It's got 2-bar of boost wound in it on a big turbo.
And I think it's got north of 20 degrees of timing, so
it's fruity.
it's
And
a ripper.
also, the other added bonus of this trip to Jack's was another 900 RPM.
Yeah, good point.
the
Yeah,
Neo
so
head.
yeah, that made a big difference. So it was 70.
It was 76
Yeah.
before, and it's now 8400 RPM.
Yeah, so that makes a big difference.
It really does.
Also, in the interim, I'd absolutely obliterated my diff at, I think that was Tracks. I'm pretty sure it was the last event of the year.
Yeah.
Trying to follow Jake. Jake made a mistake. I thought, rather than bail
Call him
out,
out like that.
yeah, rather than bail out, I thought I'll give it a clutch kick in third from pretty much standstill. And it turns out my diff didn't like that.
It's weird that.
Yeah, so that obliterated the diff. So it's on a Nismo 2A, but a 4:3 ratio. So a bit
Yeah,
more.
that was the other thing as well. You changed the ratio, didn't
a bit more geared up. So it's a bit more sharp. Jack reckons it rips. I've since done Matsuri, Japfest, and we did a test
We
day,
did a
didn't
test
we?
day at Pod first.
A Santa
yeah.
Pod, and can confirm does rip.
Well, we did 10 tyres in 16 laps. So
Yeah,
that's a
that is a negative. That is a negative.
It's certainly a little bit more wound up than it used to be. It's
Yeah,
engine-wise, it's certainly a long way from a street car these days. Although
it has carpet.
it has carpet, technically has number plates. They're not on it at the minute, but we're an MOT away from street legal.
I mean,
Officer.
we're over
We're a
the
friendly
phone.
MOT
Yeah.
away from street legal.
Yeah.
It is a very simple car, to be honest.
It is.
It's a very simple car that's gone very far, but
Yeah.
there's no wise fab.
Nope.
There's nothing special underneath it, really. The B-knuckle is, as much as it hurts my soul to say, what
Yeah.
has made that car come alive.
It has. And an attitude where I just don't care if I write it off anymore, which took some getting used to.
I think definitely. I think that helps, though, that you got into this car at a price point where that is what these cars were all about. They weren't.
Yeah. Well,
They
when
weren't rolling house deposits.
No, when I bought the car, obviously it had all the running gear in it. I sold all that running gear for like over $3,000.
If you'd have put a standard RB in it,
Yeah.
you'd have spent. It wouldn't have cost you anything.
No.
It was only because we put a top mount on it and a link at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was really the difference in cost.
Yeah, I mean, previous to obviously,
And it was a genuine spec R drivetrain 6-speed box as well. And
Was,
that was
yeah.
another reason for you were realising you were at the end of perhaps that 6-speed life.
yeah,
If we put more power into the SR.
been that off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, we got out of it at a good time. I say we a lot, because to be fair, a lot of it was done by Callum. We've shared a unit for a long
Yeah.
time and a friendship on and off. But
I don't know. You might not want to be friends with me anymore. I've seen what this has done to your bank account.
yeah, it's not good. But anyway,
But yeah, we did share a unit for a long time and built our cars sort of
Yeah.
side by side at the time, didn't we?
we did. Well, actually, I rebuilt this twice in the time that you rebuilt yours,
Yeah.
but we'll go into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the quick synopsis is S14, then into the S15, got rid of the SR, put in God's motor.
The real God's motor.
The real, we all know. Put in a better drive line. This was, oh, by the way, this is when it was all low. So for a long time, me and Callum were both huge fans of people like Animal Style and people like that. So it was all low as you can go, big 3-piece wheels. I mean, Callum still is that guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work, but looks sick.
Looks sick not going anywhere.
Yeah. And to be fair, for a few years, I really enjoyed that. And then it was a Matsuri event, and I remember ringing you, and I was like, it was good.
You tiptoed around the place there, didn't you?
But that's literally it. And like it was easy to drive, but it didn't really do anything. It sort of swung to the left.
You're on road tyres as well at the time.
On road tyres. Although I had started to dabble with Zestinos actually at the time.
Yeah.
But at high pressures.
Yeah.
And it just sort of swayed left and right, and
It was wafty.
it was wafty.
It wafted around the place. And
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I left feeling a bit like, meh. And several people had said, like, car looks sick and got some cool photos. And I thought, oh, yeah, that was like a good weekend. But I left a bit meh. And at the time, this is several years ago now, people like C's Garage, who I'm a huge fan of.
Animal Style again.
They'd started to raise their cars up. They looked awful. But you were seeing some absolutely wild driving. And then when you chase that back and you look at people like Casey from Shirts Tucked In and some of the guys in Japan, and you see these cars and they're just like, they're coming in so much faster. They're throwing the cars in backwards. They're not using any handbrake. They're literally like balls to the wall, basically driving.
And the cars are stylish in a completely different way. They're not necessarily stylish in the traditional drifting world of low and big wheels. I mean, certainly. I mean, now I would say that arguably this style is as stylish as low cars these days, and it is as commonplace now. It's becoming more and more commonplace as people are.
It is, and that could be a topic for a future episode.
But
yeah, they've got their own style and their own presence, but it's not the same thing as a slammed 3-piece.
Yeah.
Like when you go back like a Boo Moon and people like that, the proper cool, cool stance drift cars. It's not that sort of thing. But the driving really excited me, and seeing people like Julian Jacobs particularly go from slammed S15 to like PS13 and like Apple Valley Speedway, I think it is. And him like throwing it in backwards.
Yeah, throwing it at the scenery.
Yeah, literally throwing it at the scenery, blowing bumpers off and like trying to stick it. And people
it's exciting to watch, and it looked at the time. This was a whole new sort of wave at the time in this sport, and certainly that was the first time it came to the UK and sort of the first time we were seeing this sort of style in the UK regularly, not as in drivers in the UK, but sort of over social media and stuff. It became more and more apparent as the American world of drifting took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
So I think your exact words on the phone were, "I feel like I could have done more at this event." You were happy with the car, but not happy with your driving, and realised that the car was probably what was limiting that.
Yeah, and at the time, I think Charlie Hume had just raised his car up, and I think you'd sent me it, and I'd been like, "Ooh."
I'd definitely been like that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it looked awful, and sorry, Charlie, but I thought it looks disgusting.
Yeah.
But then I don't know if you'll remember watching this, but I watched a video. I can't remember his name. He had a red S15, and a red A86.
Was it Paz?
Paz. Yeah, not
Was it Paz?
Paz.
Not Paz.
Pillay.
Purple Paz.
Yeah.
Red Paz.
Well, he's not purple. But.
Well, yeah, he's not purple, but his car is.
Yeah. And I'd seen that car at Three Sisters, and he was loading it up, and then he was flicking it the other way, and then loading it up, and then flicking it the other way. And I watched the in-car footage and was like, that looks sick. And it was at that point I then started to find out a bit more about B-knuckle and raising the front and rear bias and two-way diff and all this sort of other stuff. And that's when I thought, well, we'll give it a go, because that looks like a lot of fun. And it was sort of spiraled from there, really. And since then, a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon.
There's quite a big scene for it in this country now.
There is. There's a lot of, and not just Nissans, there's a lot of MX-5s.
definitely.
There's a lot of people that have gone
Hard driving rather than big styling. Stylish driving rather than stylish cars. I
hard
would say.
parking.
Yeah, well, don't come at me like that. You're going to hurt my feelings.
So yeah, so that was that. But we've gone off on a tangent. But yeah, basically that's the backstory on me and my car. Sorry to go into so much detail, but we'll pass over to Callum because he's got a different.
I've got a very different
journey, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. So as Adam said, I obviously introduced him into this. At the time, we were at sixth form, so we would have been 16, 17.
Yeah. I know you had a moped, and I think I was then getting my car.
Imagine me on a moped. That's some. Them 50cc's are working.
That's a strong moped.
It wasn't. It blew up a lot.
I meant structurally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Structurally sound. Mechanically, it was under some duress.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd actually been around. There was where I lived at the time. There was a lot of American Air Force bases, and a lot of the Americans, when they came over, came from Okinawa and seemed to land in Lakenheath, Mildenhall. Yeah. And they brought their cars with them from Okinawa. So a lot of them were Skylines, JZXs, Sephiros, S-bodies, R-bodies.
Really cool stuff.
Yeah, it was like little Japan around there at times. You could drive around, and if you were sort of in the local area to the bases, you'd do well to do a journey without seeing either a massive American truck or something Japanese. And as a little weirdo, with no friends, because I was into cars from far too young of an age, I used to cycle around my village and just speak to people that were working on their cars, which, I mean, these days you probably wouldn't do. You might end up...
Yeah, probably get abducted.
Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah.
But I found a guy who had, on his driveway at the time, an R33 Skyline, an AE86, 3 S13s, and his daily driver was a JZX.
And he paid £500 for the lot, or something ridiculous. I
remember him buying his Corolla, and well, he didn't. Yeah, he bought his Corolla after I met him, but he had everything else, and the Corolla now he paid £2,800 for, and that was expensive. So, what a crazy world we live in now. And he actually took that back to America with him in the end.
Did he?
But yeah, I got speaking to him, and he was doing this thing called drifting, which I was into. Max Power at the time. I had all the Max Power magazines. I've still got about 300 Max Power magazines in my loft.
Loves a subwoofer.
And I'd seen the team steer from the rear, which were an Irish team of 300ZX, flip painted, Bomex kitted 300ZXs they were, all three of them, with flame kits.
Oof.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Perhaps not quite as cool as I thought it was, but I was like, I was always interested in people driving. I was much more interested in the cars and what they were doing than I was replacing your rear lights with fish bowls, which I saw in a Saxo in one of those magazines.
Nice.
Weird.
Back in the day, there was some weird
when
stuff.
That was a good idea. And so I sort of heard of drifting through that. This guy Roger, who did have race cars,
He was the Australian.
he was very American, but he was called Roger, and he had a lot of race cars. He was going to Norfolk Arena to go drifting, which is a track local to us.
Yeah, it is.
A kind of entry-level track, really, in this country, and still is going strong as an entry-level track.
Yeah, it is.
But at the time, Japanese cars were cheap. They were plentiful as well. They were everywhere. So I ended up getting my mum and dad to take me to Kings Lynn to go and watch this drifting, and fell in love with it immediately. The cars, there was probably, Adam will find this hard to believe, having been to Norfolk Arena regularly, but there was probably 90% Japanese cars.
No, it did used to be. It did used to be, because back in the day,
5% Fords and like 3 BMWs, and they were all E30s.
Yeah.
Because that's what was cheap at the time. And yeah, fell in love with it, and ended up, basically, that was my pocket money. Rather than getting some money for doing the chores around the house, I'd say, oh, can you take me to the next drift event? And I've got involved in it that way. Started to get to know the people that ran it, ended up helping them. That led to a 10-year sort of friendship relationship where I got well down the rabbit hole. This was all before I had a driving license, before I was able to drive. Dad, at the time, my dad said it was nothing more than banger racing. Said it was ridiculous. He comes from a world of enjoying rallying and sort of more formal motorsports, I would say. Yeah. Certainly rallying anyway. he came up to, I said, no, come on, you've got to come with me. At this point, I've been going sort of 6-7 months. And he came up with me, and I put him in a car with someone. And on the way home, he said, well, where do we buy a car? So that was the rabbit hole down for two of us.
We've all been there.
And luckily, Dad had the funding, because I was like 14, so I definitely didn't. And we went and bought a mint E34 525, non-Vanos, the good one, the iron block, off BMW M Performance Tech at the time. He was a
really?
He was a professional, top level certified M Performance technician at the time, and we gave him £400 for his E34 with 6 months tax and 6 months test. So there's probably 200 quid of that was tax.
Literally, yeah.
And it had everything already done. It was fully polybushed. It had M5 anti-roll bars. It had bucket seats. It had a hydraulic handbrake in it. The lock stops ground off, like all good drift cars, when you're in entry level. And Dad drove it home, and we had a ball in it, and sort of fell in love with the car. I've got a real soft spot for them still, probably from a sentimental point of view.
They are cool.
But it's a big old barge, and kind of had been told it was a good drift car by the guy who we bought it from, but you don't know until you get there. So we booked our first drift day. At the time, my mum was actually daily driving it back and forth to the prison that she worked at with a massive Jimmy Up sticker saying hard driving and safe sex. So, that's what you want your mum in. But that was what was emblazoned on the back window. I didn't put that on, that was on it already. I definitely wouldn't have put it on for my mother. And we went to our first drift day and fell in love with it. At that point, we kind of... from there on, we were driving every event that they did. And at the time, Norfolk Arena was a really busy place. There was sort of 2 to 3 events a month, and we did all of them.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, some pretty cool cars. I remember going out in PS13s and all sorts of stuff. A few years later, obviously, but there were some cool cars.
And it was mainly Japanese cars up there. There wasn't a lot of mixture. Not like these days, it's all BMWs, but
or 350Zs.
Or 350Zs. But
we'll get onto that.
Yeah, at the time it was a very big eclectic mix of cars. But the people who ran it, Marks and Mini, were big in the British drift scene at the time. They were involved in the British Championship at the time, which...
Is that when Sweeps owned it? Or ran
it? No, that's when Sweeps owned it.
Yeah.
So they were involved in the British Drift Championship and anything that Sweeps did, so any demos and stuff, so Japfest and so on. So I ended up going and helping them. Well, initially I was helping them to run the events, whilst me and Dad were helping to, and my mum, in fact, all three of us were helping to run the events, driving in between each event, and then I started tagging along with them to the British Drift Championship, Japfest, Matsuris, sort of anything that they were at, marshalling.
Awesome Fest.
Yeah, Awesome Fest. I did do Awesome Fest. I didn't do it with them, actually. I went with someone else, but I was at the infamous
Awesome Fest.
The Awesome Fest.
One and only time.
Yeah, and it was...
It was an Awesome Fest.
Oh, it was awesome. It was spectacular. Yeah. It nearly shut Mallory Park down permanently.
That's a story for another...
That's when you know you've held a good event.
Yeah.
But yeah, that led to me running start line for BDC for a while and marshalling and really becoming immersed in what was British drifting at the time, both practice day level as well as competition at the time. And my love for the sport grew and grew and grew with it to a nerdy obsession, so I would say, at this point, and certainly at the time as well. So yeah, I got to witness all sorts of, from the most entry level of cars all the way up to the, at the time, what would have been the highest spec of competition car in this country.
Yeah.
And see the progression of the sport at both ends as well. So when I was first involved in BDC, it was road tyres and people street drove their car there, and then I saw the evolution of the cars, and 400 horsepower initially was like the most rowdy car there.
Fast.
And then by the time I was done with BDC, 400 horsepower wasn't enough to start half the cars.
Not fast.
But yeah, so meanwhile, we had the E34, we drifted that for 10 years we had that, and the biggest issue we had with it was a snap diff bolt.
That's pretty good going.
Yeah, and I mean it had a hard life. That car I learnt to drift in, I learnt to twin in,
You learned to drive in it.
Yeah, literally learnt to drive in it. Yeah, I didn't have a license for the first 4 years of doing it. Learnt to crash in it really well.
That
was part of the learning to twin thing. But yeah, that was at a time where sort of the missile era was underway, and it was underway in this country in the form of £400 E36s. So,
which, to be fair, is a pretty good missile.
yeah, and they were disposable at the time. You bent one, and it was, if it was really bent, you got a new one next week.
Oh dear, I'll have the big bucket seats out,
Yeah, move the
engine
bucket
out,
seat.
and I'll put in another one.
Yeah, exactly that. So I learnt a lot with that car. But my heart was always with Japanese cars. I had a lot of friends at the time who had Japanese cars. A good friend of mine, Ash, was into Skylines at the time. Had 10, 15 of
I
them.
remember being at sixth form, and this kid he looked really young, even though he obviously wasn't. And he'd just show up in like a different R32, or a JZX.
Pick me up.
Yeah, it was really odd. But everyone else is in Corsas and Fiestas and whatever.
Yeah, he had a penchant for R32s.
Yeah, he did like a 32.
Soras, JZX Crestas, 33s, 180s,
Yep.
14s. Basically anything you could have at the time he had. And they were all £800, £1,000. They were all really cheap cars. So he just used to chop and change them as and when something came up he liked.
Normally it'd come up on base.
Yeah.
And someone want rid of it really quick.
Yeah,
because
so
they were
as
going back.
the Americans leave this country, they're not allowed to have any UK registered cars in their name. So if they're leaving the country and they're not exporting the car with them, the car has to be out of their name by the time they go to get on the plane. If it's not, they're held back. And at this point, they've already packed their lives up, everything. So you used to be able to buy cars for nothing because they were desperate to get rid of them. If one of their friends hadn't bought them, they needed it gone. So they would sell it for nothing. My dad actually bought a classic Mini off a guy at the time for £100 because he needed to leave the next day.
There's some good stories.
So you could buy cars for nothing.
I don't know if that's the same. It might have changed.
I think they're probably more aware of what the cars are worth now because they're worth a lot. And at the time as well, that's another point. At the time, a lot of these cars weren't eligible to be shipped to America.
No,
they weren't 25 years old.
Yeah.
So they couldn't take them with them, and they couldn't leave them here just for anyone to have. So they needed.
So you
to
stole
sell
them.
So yeah, we started basically stealing them, and that really grew my love for Japanese cars. My friend Ash wasn't particularly good at working on cars. By this point, I'd started to get a hang of working on cars, so I did a lot of working on them for him, and a lot of the sort of basic mechanicking for him. And eventually, I actually ended up buying one of the cars off him. In fact, I say I bought it. I swapped my long-loved R32 project. It was a factory manual GTST. Had no running gear in it, had no engine, had no gearbox. Did have a diff, and had no coilovers on it, and no front hubs. And I swapped it for a BMW 330D gearbox.
Good swap.
Good swap. Well,
yeah.
Financially a good swap.
At the time, it was a good swap.
yeah, it was a good swap.
In hindsight, bit expensive.
It got a lot more expensive than a 330D gearbox. And that led to 8-year build.
So we got our unit up the road because we thought.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I
thought
the car.
I'm building this car, and you've bought that car, and we need the space. And I think you were living in.
I was still living at Mum and Dad's at the time.
And I think I was too, to be fair.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
So we met in the middle at 2 miles up the road from your house.
Yeah, at my house, basically.
And we got a unit together. And you had this at the time and wanted to.
I had that, but it was SR, white, low. Yeah.
I had the 32 and it needed one of everything. And when I bought the car, my initial plan was this. Also, might add, this was when Rockingham was in full swing.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P. And that was a track in this country that did a massive amount for.
I think we could do a podcast on Rockingham.
Definitely, I think we probably should. But yeah, that was in full effect. I wanted to be involved. I was up there marshalling. I was going to watch anyway, or up with you or whoever else was there, which was everyone basically. That was the heart of British drifting for a good few years.
Rockingham was.
And I said, I bought this 32, and I said, give me a year and £5,000. A year and £5,000.
Famous last words.
I'll chuck. I knew it needed a little bit of welding. I am a welder for a living, so I was like, that won't be an issue. I'll chuck a couple of sets of...
It was an issue.
Yeah,
it was a big issue.
I'll chuck some sills in it, and I'll chuck a standard running gear in it, and we'll go drifting. And Jack, again, told me, don't even bother, sell it, and just buy a car that works. And I said, no, Jack, what do you know? I will build a car. It will be cheaper.
Jack, the guy who bought cars every year, mapped cars.
Yes, Jackie bought cars every week.
He drifted. I think he's drifted since like, oh my God, early days.
Yeah, yes. He started early, very early.
Yeah. So obviously you don't listen to a guy like that.
No, you don't.
What does he know?
No, you don't listen to the guy that's done it all. You know best because you're 18. So.
And a welder. So
and a welder. Yeah, well, I can do this. Cut to 8 years later at approximately £50,000. Well, about £35,000 at this point. I had a running Skyline.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Adam had built his car twice.
Yep.
Changed the colour, changed the style, changed the engine.
Yeah.
Done one of everything. And then again, I finished my car. Finally got it on the road. We did 700 miles in it in the space of a summer. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, I put it away for winter and went to get it out for summer again, or for spring. I'll just change the oil, and it was full of metal. And
it was.
The good engine I'd been sold had been...
By Jack?
By Jack, no.
Hang on, hold that.
Yeah, Jack did sell me the engine. The good engine that I got sold was no longer good.
Wasn't Jack's fault though.
It wasn't Jack's fault. It was actually due to some powder coat blocking the oil pickup.
A lot of powder coat. A lot of powder coat.
Yeah.
Blocking the oil pickup.
That may or may not have been provided by a Skyline specialist who did the rocker covers for me for free.
They were expensive rocker covers.
They got quite costly, yeah. So 700 miles in, I needed an engine. I just swapped jobs. I thought I was a millionaire. So I spoke to Mr. Dave Yandel and was like...
That's what you do?
Yeah, I said, Dave, I've got a lot of money burning a hole in my pocket. I need something that goes... I said...
Fast.
I need something that goes fast. And I need it to be reliable. Yeah.
Fast and reliable.
Yeah, he's like, what are your goals? And I said, really fast. And he said, okay. I said I wanted to sort of be 500-600 horsepower. That was the aim. Reliable street car, drift car, that would take that all day long. And he built me an engine. I went to put the engine back in the car and thought, well, I can't put that back in on the homemade exhaust manifold I had.
Yeah.
And the China turbo and everything else that was around it. So then I thought...
The dodgy loom.
The terrible engine loom that fell off everything all the time. So I was in a world of pain, and I went, whilst I'm here, I may as well do this.
We've all been there. And I might as well, whilst I'm here.
Yeah.
I could just.
Yeah. And then the cost of the engine again, in bits that surrounded the engine, I then had my running car again. I put a Haltech dash in it. I put a brand new loom in it. Jack built me a loom. Fuel pressure sensor. I put it on e-throttle. I put
all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, I put everything on it. I put trigger kit on it. Whatever it needed, it had, and sent it for mapping, and it made 497 horsepower, not 500, as Jack likes to point out to me.
I think that was so deliberate.
Yeah,
that was so deliberate.
That was a heartbreak. that really was a heartbreak. I've told everyone from here on out it made 500, but it didn't. And yeah, I built that. At this point, the car was built, really.
Yeah, so you've done 8.5 years, no drift days in that time. Rockingham had closed. I'd rebuilt my car twice.
Yes.
And you had a lot of debt from R32.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah.
But Jack did tell you.
Yeah,
just buy one.
Yeah, so yeah, the $5,000 and a year later snowballed somewhat.
Yeah. But it was done, and to be fair, it was a really, really good car. There's a full build thread on Driftworks.
Yeah,
the
R32 Chronicles. It was a labour of love, to be honest. It was my dream car that I'd always wanted, and I built it exactly how I wanted in the end.
Yeah.
And then we took it to Doryfest, didn't we? We did Doryfest in it. Had a sick time. Came home.
Hugged a lot.
Yeah.
Shed a tear.
Finally got to drive together in this and the 32 that were built side by side. They were the same colour, matching cars. And yeah, got home and then had a child 2 months later.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, had a, not me and Adam, me and my
No,
wife.
yeah. That's a whole different.
Yeah. Things in hotel rooms that have happened are a whole different story.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we can't share those ones.
built. Yeah, at that
Built
point,
a child.
Yeah, built a child.
Yeah, built a child.
That was arguably cheaper than the Skyline, actually. Took less than a year, and it took less than $5,000.
It took less than 8 years. That's for sure.
Yeah,
That's for
definitely
sure.
did, yeah. And the car sat. The car sat for about a year. About a year. Year and a bit. And I got sick of looking at it. I think
you got demoralised to look at it just being sat there.
I didn't really enjoy driving it on the road. It was a bit serious for the road. It was a bit low, and it was a bit shite on the road, to be honest. It wasn't a road car at all. I'd always built it as a street car.
Yeah.
In my mind, and then I welded in a full cage and gave it 500 horsepower and put it on 12-inch splits.
Yeah, and I also remember once you'd got it running, and it was like Panda themed at this point. It had like black over fenders, white doors, and it was like Panda themed because obviously we hadn't painted it yet. And I remember you said, "Oh fuck it, I'll take it up the road," or "I'll take it up the road."
Yeah.
And I think you got like 4 or 5 miles up the road.
I didn't even get that. I got followed from the roundabout at my village, so it's about a mile away from my house.
Yeah, and you got followed by a policeman.
Yeah, and he told me to give him his keys and not be give him my keys and get out of that banger. Were his words.
Yeah, and to be fair, it did look rough. Bearing in mind there was a lot of money in that car.
Yeah, there was, there was a lot of unpainted fiberglass.
Yeah.
There was everything else was rattle can to kind of make it presentable, but it absolutely wasn't.
It wasn't.
Every tyre touched the arch because I was about that life at the time.
So I think that gave you wicked anxiety, which is fair enough.
At the time, I still do. I needed my licence for my job, and at the time, I had a car that potentially was going to lose me that licence in one manoeuvre. So not even by driving poorly, just by it sitting there.
Looking bait.
Sick. Yeah, looked sick, but the policeman didn't agree.
No, he wasn't very happy
So I didn't enjoy driving it on the road. It basically filled me with anxiety that someone was either going to T-bone it or the PC Plod was going to take it away from me.
Ruin you.
Yeah, both viable options, both entirely possible. It really didn't belong on the road.
No.
So it sat for a while. I took it out once, I think, that year. I took it out once or twice after Dory Fest that year, before my daughter was born. And then when she was born, it didn't move for a year. And on Christmas Eve, the following year, I decided it was going, and I put the breaking list up that night. I tried to sell it, and no one would buy it from me.
Yeah. They'd seen the build thread, and they said, no.
Yeah, no one would buy it. Everyone told me it was sick and it was cheap, but no one would buy it from me.
Yeah.
So then 2 days later, I put a breaking thread up on Christmas Eve while sat in the pub, and by the time I went home, had $6,000 in my bank account. It flew off the shelves because the car, to be fair, had at the bar drivetrain. It still had a 25 box in it and a GTST diff, but it wasn't anything special. It wasn't an OS Icon box or a sequential or anything. But it flew off the shelves and was broke for parts in a matter of a week and disappeared.
Yeah.
And then after that, I said, I like drifting. I think
I
did still like drifting. I want to continue doing it, but I want it to be a little bit something I don't care about as much, because I was quite precious about that car because everything was so hard to get. I'd put so much time into it, so I was a bit precious about it. I'll build a cheap and fun and reliable 350Z, he said. So I bought a good one. That was wrong. But it had a two-way in it, and that meant that it didn't do drifts because it didn't make enough power to overcome the grip that the two-way made.
So again, we were warned by Jake Crouch from the internet that do not use a two-way in a 350Z. They don't work. They don't have the power. You won't be able to get it to lock and unlock, and it just won't drift.
And I said, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You've only built 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I've never built one before, so I'm going to ignore you and buy one with a two-way in it.
Yeah.
That didn't work, but it was a mint shell, I was told by the seller, until I took the side skirts off and I could get my fist in them. But I'm not welding another car, so it still looks like that.
It is red though. It's
is red, painted. Yeah. We've rolled that turd in glitter and built what looks like, to be fair, quite a cool entry-level drift car, I would say now. And I street drove it to Dory Fest to Scotland last year, which is 500 miles each way.
The alternator fell off.
Yes, and I pulled into pits and was talking to who is now the new owner of my Skyline,
Yes.
Jordan. And whilst talking to him, it turned off behind me,
Yeah, it did do that.
and it broke. So after a 12-hour day driving there, I then needed another 3-hour round trip to go get cam sensors at 11 o'clock
Yeah,
at night.
luckily through my work, I'd purchased a car in Scotland. So we went and got that car
Yeah.
and then took that car,
Took
a
that
BMW, all the way to the other side of
The
Scotland.
other side of Scotland to buy cam sensors.
To buy
I bought all of
from
them.
a sound dude,
Yeah,
to be
from
fair.
Paul, who was a sound dude with an
Really cool.
incredible garage.
Yeah,
The best home garage I've ever seen.
mega. Yeah, cool dude.
Yeah, got the car going, did a weekend at Doryfest and had a scream. I'll be honest, I had more fun in that car than I did in the Skyline because I wasn't worried about it. If it gets bent, I can buy all the parts on eBay on the way home.
Yep.
If it kicks a rod out the block, it's 800 quid, it's not a house deposit. The kind of anxiety of the investment wasn't there in this car, and still isn't, and it's great. It's a lot more fun than I expected it to be, and it still looks cool, which to me is important.
Yeah, it's the same recipe. It's the same wheels actually.
Same
that
wheels,
were on the
similar
R32.
style kit, same colour.
Yeah, yeah. It does look the part. It's quite simple. It's bucket seats.
A lock kit, a couple of adjustable arms on the back to make the wheels point in the right direction. Not a two-way diff.
Yeah, that
a welder.
Yeah,
and a clutch, and a cooling system. Put an oil cooler on it,
and a handbrake.
Big radiator in it, and yeah, that's it. It's very simplistic.
Yep.
And
a map.
Oh, and a map that I didn't
because so Callum said that the issue with the car was it had no power, so it needed mapping. So I had it mapped, and then later found out that it wasn't the power.
No,
it was definitely still the diff.
I was actually at this point I was about 1,200 quid into it needs more power, so I'll fix things. Yeah, I was about 1,200 quid into fixing a problem that was actually the diff that I was
that
told
Jake had told you about 4 months before.
I was told I didn't need.
Yeah,
and he was right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I still have now. It's a low boy, big splits, stylish looking car.
Yeah.
It may not remain that way.
We'll
Adam's trying to persuade me to the wheelie side. And yeah, I think it's going to be it's going to become a sole track car, I think.
Yeah.
The shell's a little bit far gone for an MOT, possibly.
Well,
unless I decide to get the welder out again.
Yeah, unless you know a guy in Birmingham.
Probably won't. So yeah, and in the meantime, I suppose this is a general overview, isn't it? So in the meantime, my love of drifting has expanded into all forms of competition. I'm a huge Drift Masters fan.
Yeah, both are.
Follow Formula Drift, follow anything and everything drifting, really. And that's what's really led us to this debacle that we've got going on here. So,
yeah.
So this is a little idea, started as a little sort of brainwave in the way back from a drift event, didn't it?
I think I was picking up a car and I rang you on the way back, and we always chat on the phone, and we always chat about. I drive a lot, and
you're a car salesman. Then, you own a business.
Yeah, this is my facility, as it were. I do car sales. It's my company, and quite often I'm picking cars up, and all the time we'll speak on the phone about drifting and this and that, and did you see this and did you see that, and what about this, and we could try this and try that. And between us, we're no experts, but we have a good level of knowledge, mainly through making mistakes.
Oh, yes.
A lot of mistakes.
But also through watching a lot of other people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And being boring enough to pay enough attention to see what people are trying and what people are doing.
Yeah, and you've done a lot. You've done from marshalling to organising events or co-organising events to driving a grassroots 350Z to driving a 500 horsepower sort of R32.
Yeah, and at North Carolina I got the opportunity to drive a fair few different cars, a lot of different basic cars. I got the opportunity to drive a few what would have been pro level cars at the time in this country. So that brings us on to
reasonably
average driver that has had some interesting opportunities to drive stuff.
Yeah.
So we kind of are at a point where we feel like we have perhaps the background to have an opinion. It might not be valid, but certainly these are conversations that we basically found that we were talking anyway. So we thought, well, let's see if anyone else wants to listen to our ramblings.
Probably won't, to be fair.
No, but very, very possibly won't.
But at least if something happens to me or you, our families have some videos of us. which is always good.
Or you've got something to rip the piss out of us for when we post this on the internet.
Which we will happily accept.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we're expecting a lot, and we will give each other just as much as you can give us.
Yeah, we have some strong opinions. Certainly at events, we've had some strong opinions in the past, but mainly in jest. Like,
yeah,
we are both about having a good time, and that is the most important thing in drifting for both of us. Although we have different takes on what cars and how to set cars up, certainly, or how we prefer to look at cars and how we prefer to drive them. We both just want to go and have fun with the boys, and I think that's the most important thing. Is and girls, if there is some, but there isn't many in our circle.
Like 3, I think.
But yeah, it's all about having fun with your mates and
sharing stories and
exactly.
information and mistakes. I.e., Jack said buy a $5,000 car, go have fun.
Yeah.
50 grand later, we're not having fun.
No,
all this sort of stuff, we can share, and you may learn something from it. You may not.
Yeah.
You may agree with what we say. You might not.
No, you probably won't.
You probably won't, to be fair. But at least, we have these conversations anyway, as you said.
Yeah.
And at least we can get it out there and see what happens, see what comes of it.
Sort of try and make something from it. I'm a welder for a living, so I sit with headphones in all day and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to all of the other competitors. We're not.
They are now.
Yeah, we're not competition. I'll be honest. At this point,
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we're coming for
We're
you.
coming for
We're
you.
coming for that Spotify contract. No, I listen to it. I consume a lot of podcasts. It's something I find more interesting than music, because after you've listened to the same song 10 times over, or the same album, it gets a bit tedious. So I listened to people waffle, and I thought, I'm pretty good at waffling, and my friend Adam's pretty good at waffling. So
I can waffle, to be fair.
So let's waffle together, and that's what's led us to this. So the idea is it's going to be sort of a somewhat informal trip through the world of drifting, certainly from a kind of British drifting standpoint. That's what we are involved in, but also not exclusively that. Also looking at what's happening internationally with guys in America, guys in New Zealand, all over the world, Japan, competition, level cars, competition series, and everything from the most basic of cars and setups and tyres and styling, all the way up to pro level cars, what people are doing on the cutting edge of the sport, and kind of give our informal and unintellectual take on these things.
Uninformed enthusiasts, so I think is probably the best phrase. But we're going to focus on certain subjects.
Our opinions and perhaps
right or wrong,
a little bit of information as well, if we're even capable of dishing that out. But that's the kind of general idea behind what we're doing here.
We can waffle on, but the synopsis is we're going to go through drifting from entry level to top end, tyres to engines to pros and cons of each thing, and try and give our opinion on it, events, do's, don'ts, all that sort of stuff, as well as passing some stories between ourselves and some funny things that have happened in the past. We've got plenty of those. And potentially in the future we may go speak to some of our other friends in the sport, bring some other guests on, have a chat to them about their lives and their history, their time in the sport, and what they take on the latest tyres or the latest trend, if you will. So we'll go through a bit more in due course, but that's a sort of start of the series, as it were, and an overview on us. If you'd like to know anything specific, or if you think we're just talking utter, let us know. If you'd like to know anything about Callum or Callum's car specifically, or my car, we can go into a bit more detail, but we don't want it to be too long and too much about too much about us, because that's not what it's about. But this first episode was just to give you a bit of a brief background on me and Callum. Not that we're famous or well known,
we're not influencers.
Literally not at all.
We're not professionals. No. We're just two guys that like the sport and have decided to sit in front of you lot and tell you all about it.
Literally that. And hopefully there'll be some information in there that you go, or there'll be
something that makes you laugh. If nothing else.
Yeah, us making an absolute fool of ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap for this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit different to our usual podcast going forward. A little bit of background on us. Hopefully you enjoyed that. To follow us, you can follow us on Instagram at Idle Chat, or on YouTube at Idle Chat Podcast. And to follow us individually, I'm at AdamMS15 and Callum is at Callum_Pete.
Yeah, and moving forward, this is going to be on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you choose to enjoy your podcast from. If you could do us a favour and follow on whatever your platform of choice is, give us a review, give us some feedback, and that will help us to improve moving forward.
Yeah.
And hopefully you come back next time to listen to another one.
Yeah, and if you don't, well, you're missing out.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. The world's behind that.
I like 90s junk t-shirt. That's a good t-shirt.
Jimmy. I am Mr. Jimmy Oates. Basically, I only own Jimmy Oates t-shirts because he's the only influencer that says 4XL. They're the only ones that actually fit me. So I'm a big Jimmy fan anyway, but I'm a bigger Jimmy fan, literally, because he's the only one that sells them in 4XL. And they're American 4XL, so they actually fit.
Adam LZ, if you're watching this, can you please supply
Up your sizes, man. I need more kisses in the neck.
4XL I Love 90s Junk t-shirts. It's a niche, I admit.
Yeah, it's a small market. Well, it's not. It's a big market, but there's not a lot of buyers.
You will have to put the price of the material up slightly.
Yeah,
because
there is a charge for 2 t-shirts. Oh, for fuck's sake.